Sometimes silence speaks louder than any argument ever could. When you stop chasing, explaining, or proving your worth, that's when your power returns. He thought your silence meant you didn't care. But what he didn't realize was that your silence wasn't emptiness, it was peace. It was the sound of you choosing yourself. You're not ignoring him out of pride. You're respecting yourself enough not to beg for what should have been freely given. Attention, consistency, effort, because love that must be earned isn't love, it's labor. At first, he might feel relieved. He'll tell himself, she's finally stopped texting. But days later, that relief turns into curiosity. Curiosity turns into confusion, and confusion turns into regret. Because when a woman stops reaching out, it means she's finally reached within. She's no longer waiting for closure. She's creating it. She's not proving her value. She's living it. And one day he'll scroll through old messages, wondering when you changed. But the truth is, you didn't change. You simply remembered who you were before you tried to fit into his silence. That's when he realizes he didn't lose someone quiet. He lost someone who finally found peace in her silence. Silence is often misunderstood. People think it's a sign of weakness, of giving up, of losing the battle. But in truth, silence can be one of the most powerful responses you can give when someone begins to take your presence for granted. When you match his silence, you're not engaging in a game. You're choosing a different kind of strength. It's the kind that doesn't need to shout, prove, or convince. It's quiet, steady, and deeply grounded. It's the kind of strength that says, I could reach out, but I won't. Not because I don't care, but because I care too much about my peace to keep fighting for someone who doesn't fight for me. Oh, when someone pulls away, our natural instinct is to close the distance. We send messages, seek clarity, try to fix what feels broken. But sometimes the most healing thing you can do is to stop trying, not out of ego, but out of understanding. Understanding that you cannot force connection. You cannot build closeness with someone who values distance. Matching his silence isn't about punishing him. It's about protecting your energy. It's about saying, if you can live in silence, I can live in peace. In those quiet moments, you'll start to see how much noise you had been living with, overthinking, worrying, waiting for replies that never came, replaying conversations that went nowhere. You start to realize how heavy that all was, how much space it took in your mind. When you finally match his silence, you give yourself a moment to breathe again. You begin to listen to your own thoughts, your own needs, your own feelings. You start to see that your value doesn't depend on whether someone chooses to communicate or not. You are still worthy, still important, still enough. At first, it might hurt. Silence can feel like rejection. You might question if you're doing the right thing. You might wonder if he even notices your absence. But here's the truth. Silence has a way of echoing. It travels. It reaches the places where your words never could. When you stop talking, people start listening. When you stop showing up, they start noticing. The absence of your energy becomes louder than your presence ever was. There's a quiet kind of power in not reacting. When you don't chase, you're not being cold, you're being centered. You're not giving up, you're growing up. You're learning that peace is more valuable than constant emotional chaos. You're learning that someone who truly values you won't make you feel like you have to beg for their attention. Silence becomes your boundary, your message, your mirror. It reflects everything they've done or failed to do without you having to say a word. In that silence, something else starts to shift. You begin to regain control over your emotions. You start sleeping better, thinking clearer, moving lighter. You realize that your strength isn't in fighting to be understood. It's in being okay, even when you're not understood. You stop waiting for him to realize your worth and instead begin to embody it. Your silence becomes your way of saying, I don't need to convince anyone to see me. Matching his silence doesn't mean you don't care anymore. It means you've stopped trying to carry both sides of the connection. It means you've stopped pouring energy into places that no longer pour back. You begin to understand that if someone truly values you, they'll break their own silence. They'll reach out. They'll make the effort. And if they don't, that tells you everything you need to know. So your silence becomes sacred. It's your self-respect made visible. It's the calm after the storm of overthinking and emotional chasing. It's not passive, it's powerful. Because silence isn't the absence of communication. It's the presence of clarity. And when you choose clarity over chaos, you become untouchable. When you stop giving your energy to someone who doesn't value it, you begin to feel a shift inside you. At first, it feels unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, because you've spent so long giving, fixing, and trying. You've been the one reaching out, checking in, making things happen. But when you finally pull that energy back, when you stop pouring yourself into someone who meets your effort with silence or indifference, something powerful happens. You start to reclaim yourself. You realize that the energy you've been giving away so freely is actually your greatest source of strength, and it belongs to you before it belongs to anyone else. Withdrawing attention doesn't mean you've stopped caring. It means you've stopped betraying yourself in the name of caring. It means you've recognized that attention is a form of currency and you no longer invest it where it brings no return. Every time you texted first, every time you made excuses for his distance, every time you hoped for change that never came, you were giving away tiny pieces of your energy. And over time, those pieces added up. You began to feel drained, anxious, unseen. But the moment you redirect that energy back to yourself, everything begins to shift. Instead of waiting for a reply, you start focusing on your own rhythm. Instead of checking your phone, you start checking in with your heart. You begin to fill your time with things that nourish you rather than exhaust you. You start to realize that your attention has power. It gives life to whatever you focus on. When your focus was on him, he was the center of your world. But when you shift that focus inward, you become the center of your world again. That's when healing begins. You start to see how much of your worth you tied to someone else's response. You begin to understand that you were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person. The energy you once used to overanalyze texts now goes into building your peace. The effort you once gave to keep a one-sided connection alive now fuels your self-growth. You begin to feel stronger, lighter, freer. Because now, instead of giving all your emotional energy away, you're finally feeding your own soul. There's something incredibly magnetic about a person who has reclaimed their energy. When you no longer chase, you move differently. Your silence speaks of self-trust. Your calmness says, I know my worth. The same energy that once went into overthinking is now building your confidence. You start taking care of your mind, your body, your purpose. You create a space in your life where peace becomes the new normal. You stop depending on someone else to give you closure or comfort. You give it to yourself. And here's the beauty of it. When you withdraw attention, the dynamic changes completely. The person who once ignored your effort starts to feel your absence. They notice the space where your energy used to be. What they once took for granted becomes the silence that unsettles them. But by then, you've evolved beyond the need for their validation. You're no longer reacting to their behavior. You're responding to your own growth. Your energy becomes sacred, and not everyone gets access to it anymore. This shift is not about revenge or playing hard to get. It's about alignment. You're aligning your energy with things that grow you instead of drain you. You're choosing not to water connections that don't water you back. You're choosing to walk away from emotional chaos and toward inner calm. Every time you hold back a message you used to send, every time you choose to stay silent instead of seeking reassurance, you strengthen your inner peace. You're training yourself to find comfort in your own presence rather than in someone else's attention. Over time, you begin to see that what you once thought was love was sometimes just a pattern of overgiving. You start to value your stillness as much as your effort. You understand that real love doesn't need to be chased. It flows naturally between two people who both show up. So, when you withdraw your attention, it's not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a new one. The one where your energy finally belongs to you again. When you finally stop chasing and match his silence, something shifts that he doesn't expect. At first, he may feel a strange kind of relief. He tells himself that the pressure is gone, that the constant messages, questions, and emotional connection have finally quieted down. But what he doesn't realize is that the silence he once wanted will soon become the very thing that unsettles him. Your peace. The calm you find after pulling your energy back begins to echo in places he thought would remain empty. The stillness you leave behind starts to speak louder than all the words you ever said. In the beginning, your absence might seem like nothing to him. He might scroll through his phone, notice there are no new messages, and shrug it off. He might even convince himself that you've moved on or that you were never really that attached. But silence has a way of growing louder over time. The longer it lasts, the more it reminds him of what he used to have, the laughter, the warmth, the presence that once filled the quiet moments of his day. Slowly, what felt like freedom turns into emptiness. The peace he thought he wanted turns into confusion. Your peace begins to disturb him because it doesn't make sense. He expected a reaction. He expected you to ask what went wrong, to reach out, to try to fix it. That's what he was used to. Your persistence, your willingness to bridge the gap, your emotional effort. But when that stops, when you stop chasing, he starts to realize how much of the connection was being held together by you. He sees that your silence isn't indifference, it's strength. It's not that you stopped caring, it's that you stopped begging. That realization unsettles him in a way your words never could. There's a strange kind of power in peace. It's quiet but undeniable. When you choose peace over chaos, it creates a contrast so strong that it exposes everything. He begins to feel that contrast in his own life. He notices that the energy you brought, your kindness, your attention, your warmth is missing. He might try to fill that gap with distractions, other people, or empty conversations, but nothing feels the same. Because what he misses isn't just you, it's the version of himself he could be when you were around. Your energy elevated him, your calm made him feel seen, and now that you've withdrawn it, he feels the loss not just of you, but of his own emotional balance. Your peace becomes a mirror. It reflects his behavior back at him. It shows him what happens when someone who gave everything finally chooses themselves. It's not loud or dramatic. It's quiet, steady, and powerful. He begins to see that your silence carries meaning. It says, I won't fight for a place where I'm not respected. I won't beg for what should be freely given. And that message cuts deeper than any confrontation ever could. The more peaceful you become, the more chaotic he feels. He starts to replay moments, wondering when things changed, questioning if he pushed too far, if he took too much. Your stillness begins to haunt him because it's no longer about anger or resentment. It's about detachment. When someone who used to care deeply becomes calm, it sends a signal that the emotional bond has shifted. It's no longer tied to his actions or his approval. You've moved beyond needing a response. You've found your balance. That's when the regret begins to surface. He realizes that the silence he created has now become his own. He sits with the same emptiness he once left you in. Only now, it's louder. Because your peace isn't just quiet, it's powerful enough to remind him of everything he lost when he stopped showing up. It's a peace that says, I didn't leave to hurt you. I left to heal me. And that truth is what turns his comfort into confusion and his confusion into regret. There comes a point when you stop looking outward for validation and start realizing that everything you've been seeking already exists within you. For so long, you might have tied your sense of worth to how much attention you received, how often someone reached out, or how deeply they expressed their affection. You measured your value by the way they responded to you, and every silence, every cold reply felt like a reflection of your inadequacy. But when you finally grow tired of chasing, when you stop begging for acknowledgement and start nurturing your own self-respect, everything begins to change. You start to see that validation built on someone else's approval will always be fragile, but the kind built from self-respect is unbreakable. Self-respect is quiet, but it transforms everything. It teaches you to stop over-explaining yourself to people who only listen halfway. It reminds you that you don't need to convince anyone of your worth. You just need to live it. You begin to realize that someone's failure to recognize your value doesn't lower it. Their silence doesn't define your beauty, your strength, or your significance. You stop waiting for them to make you feel chosen and start choosing yourself every single day. This shift isn't easy. It takes time to unlearn the patterns of seeking validation. You'll catch yourself reaching for your phone, wanting to check if they've noticed your absence, if they've finally texted back. You'll feel the urge to prove that you're still worth their attention. But then you'll remember that your peace is more important than their approval. You'll start to recognize that validation is temporary, but self-respect is lasting. Each time you stop yourself from reaching out, you're strengthening your boundaries. Each time you refuse to explain what should already be understood, you're reclaiming your power. As your self-respect grows, so does your sense of calm. You no longer need to chase reassurance because you've built stability within yourself. The uncertainty that once made you anxious now makes you curious. The silence that once hurt now feels like space for you to breathe, reflect, and grow. You learn that self-respect doesn't mean you don't care about others. It means you care about yourself enough to not let others diminish your light. It's the balance between compassion and boundaries, between empathy and self-preservation. When you stop seeking validation, you begin to notice how much energy you had been wasting on trying to be enough for someone who couldn't even see your effort. You see clearly that real love doesn't require constant proving. The right person will recognize your worth without needing reminders. They will show up without being asked. and you'll never again have to sacrifice your dignity to earn someone's affection. That realization is freeing. It feels like taking a deep breath after holding it for too long. People who once took you for granted begin to sense the change. Even if you never say a word, there's a shift in your energy. You carry yourself differently. You no longer seek attention. You attract it not because you're trying harder, but because you've stopped trying at all. Your peace, your confidence, your quiet strength become magnetic. You stop needing to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. And that kind of self-respect cannot be faked or taken away. The beauty of this transformation is that it doesn't make you hard, it makes you whole. You no longer see relationships as a way to complete you, but as a space to share your completeness. You understand that validation from others can feel good, but it's not the foundation of your worth. You can appreciate it without depending on it. And in that independence lies true freedom. When you walk with self-respect, you no longer chase people, you inspire them. You don't demand love, you embody it. And that quiet, grounded confidence becomes your new form of power. Regret doesn't hit all at once. It begins slowly, almost silently, creeping in through the spaces where your presence used to live. At first, he might not even notice your absence. He might think you've simply moved on, or that you'll eventually reach out again like you always did. But as time passes, the silence starts to feel heavier. It lingers in the background of his days, in the quiet moments when he's alone, and in the memories that unexpectedly surface. That's when realization begins to form. The understanding that something, or rather someone, valuable is no longer there. And with that realization comes the slow ache of regret. When someone has been used to your effort, your consistency, and your love, they begin to believe it will always be there. They take it as a given, something constant that doesn't require appreciation. They get comfortable with the idea that you'll always care, always reach out, always forgive. But when you finally stop, when you stop filling the silence and stop fixing the distance, they are forced to face the emptiness they created. That's when regret begins to take shape, not because you left, but because they finally understand what it meant when you stayed. Regret often arrives too late. It doesn't show up when they hurt you or when they ignored your efforts. It comes when they realize that you no longer react. It comes when they send a message that goes unanswered, when they see you smiling again, but not for them. When they notice that the person who once made them feel important no longer needs their validation. That's when it hits them. The understanding that your silence isn't a phase, it's a decision. You've moved from trying to be heard to choosing peace. And nothing unsettles someone more than realizing they've lost access to the version of you who once cared deeply. The human mind often mistakes availability for permanence. When you were always there, it was easy for him to overlook your presence. But once you step back, the contrast becomes undeniable. He begins to remember the little things, your voice, your laughter, your thoughtfulness, the comfort of knowing someone cared. He starts to notice that no one else brings the same energy, the same warmth, the same calm. It's not just about missing you, it's about missing who he was when you were in his life. That's what regret truly is. The painful recognition that the peace, support, and love you offered can't be replicated by anyone else. What deepens his regret is your transformation. He expected your silence to be temporary, a tactic, a way to get his attention. But when he sees that you've grown beyond needing a response, that you've found your center again, it stirs something in him. He realizes that the connection he thought he controlled has slipped completely out of his hands. You're no longer emotionally available for him to lean on. And that shift makes him confront his own choices. It's one thing to lose someone, it's another to know that your actions are what pushed them away. Regret becomes a mirror he can't look away from. It shows him the moments he dismissed your feelings, the times he chose distance over understanding, and the opportunities he wasted when you were still trying. Each memory becomes a reminder of what he could have done differently. And while you're moving forward, learning, healing, and rebuilding your peace, he's stuck replaying what went wrong. That's the cruel truth about regret. It traps the one who caused the pain while freeing the one who endured it. Eventually, he may reach out, hoping to reconnect or at least find closure. But by then, the version of you who once waited is gone. You're no longer driven by longing, you're guided by clarity. His regret is now his lesson, just as your silence became your power. Because when someone realizes too late what they lost, it's not your responsibility to return. It's their responsibility to live with the consequences of not valuing you when they had the chance. And so, in the end, this isn't just a story about silence. It's a story about strength. It's about remembering that your peace is worth more than someone else's inconsistency. It's about realizing that silence isn't weakness, it's self-respect speaking in its purest form. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to chase to be chosen. When you match his silence, you're not trying to make him regret losing you. You're simply honoring yourself enough to stop trying where effort isn't returned. Because there comes a moment when you stop waiting for closure and start creating it. You stop trying to make them understand and begin focusing on understanding yourself. You start to see that walking away doesn't mean you lost. It means you finally refuse to lose yourself. Your silence becomes your declaration of peace, your proof of power, your act of healing. And when you reach that place, you realize that the person you were chasing was never the one you truly needed. It was the version of you who forgot her worth. So let your silence speak. Let it be the echo of your growth, the sound of your self-love returning home. Let it remind anyone who ever doubted your strength that you don't need to raise your voice to be unforgettable. You just need to walk in your truth and let peace do the talking. Lex, thank you for listening. If this message touched your heart, remember, your silence has meaning, your energy has value, and your peace is priceless. Never underestimate the power of choosing yourself. Until next time, stay grounded, stay graceful, and keep shining from within. Thank you, and take care of your peace.